Yat Nicole Miera Yanashe, Tohenlini Neshle, Lasa Salka Bashashin, Kini Ani Dashache, Michoacan Dashanele. Hello, my name is Nicole Miera, Project Director at the Center for Tribal and Indigenous Engagement at the Keystone Policy Center. We are a third-party nonprofit consultant hired by U.S. DOJ to support its discussions with NTUA about improving wastewater treatment systems in Chinle, Kayenta, Tuba City, and surrounding communities. Please note, I am not a spokesperson for any of the agencies involved in this effort. Today, I will be delivering a webinar-style presentation that covers the information pertaining to the settlement with U.S. DOJ for this presentation. Okay, thank you. So this webinar is an effort to inform the Chinle and surrounding communities that the U.S. DOJ is currently seeking public comment for the partial consent decree pertaining to wastewater improvements in your community. This public comment does not apply to individual septic tanks not owned and operated by NTUA, and DOJ is not seeking comments on individual septic tanks as a part of this public comment process. It is also important to note that NTUA has already begun to work on some of the improvements that we will be discussing in this webinar today. So as we look at the content that we will be covering today, in the introduction, we will start with the basics on what wastewater is and what sanitary sewer overflows are. We will also be discussing what is going on and why we are here. We are reaching out to your communities to inform you of an important update regarding the settlement process between the U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. EPA, and NTUA. As many of you are aware, the wastewater treatment plants serving these communities are old, and under the Clean Water Act, these facilities have not been able to meet the minimum permitting requirements for treatment before discharge into washes that flow back into your community. The U.S. EPA and U.S. DOJ are now working with NTUA and their counterparts at Navajo EPA and Navajo DOJ to solve these problems. This is so NTUA can come into compliance with its permits by improving wastewater treatment and discharge and repairing or replacing sewers to eliminate sewage spills. We will also be discussing what work has been done so far. We will be discussing the settlement process. So at this stage in the effort, the effort is in the settlement process, which is essentially means this is a resolution between disputing parties about the legal case. In this case, about NTUA adhering and following requirements of the Clean Water Act, which brings us to where we are now. U.S. DOJ's open public comment period. So all disputing parties want to ensure that your community has input and recommendations on how to improve wastewater in your community. The community will have until March 8th to comment. We realize this is a short time frame to get community input to U.S. DOJ. This is where we come in and why we're trying to get the word out to community members like yourself. We will be providing presentations and community meetings in the month of February of 2024. So as we look at an introduction, we'd like to cover the basics of wastewater, sanitary sewer overflows, and what systems in your community currently look like. So as we look here, you can see this slide that basically goes over what wastewater is and how it works. As you see, there is a main pipe coming from the home that eventually flows into the wastewater treatment plant. So you can see that the water is essentially flushed or goes down your drain into the sewer system. This can include water from showers, bathtubs, sinks, toilets, washing machines, and drains. The wastewater that we are discussing here does not pertain to individual septic tanks. We're only discussing wastewater that goes into NTUA's sewage systems. Wastewater can contain substances such as food scraps, human waste, oils, soaps, other various chemicals and substances. So as we look at what a sanitary sewer overflow is, sanitary sewer systems collect and transport domestic, commercial, and industrial wastewater, limited amounts of stormwater, and even infiltrated groundwater to treatment facilities for the required treatment. Occasionally, sanitary sewers can overflow and will release raw sewage. These types of releases are called sanitary sewer overflows. Sanitary sewer overflows can contaminate our waters, causing serious water quality problems, and they can back up into homes, causing property damage and even threatening public health. So many homes, businesses, and municipal buildings send sewage to the sewers in your community. There are many pollutants in raw sewage, including bacteria and ammonia and human waste. When a sewer line breaks or gets plugged or overflows during monsoon season, raw sewage escapes the sewers. So raw sewage can make people and animals sick if they come into contact with it. So here you can see what a sanitary sewer overflow looks like. In this picture, you can see there are different levels of a sanitary sewer overflow, from very minor to very large. And sanitary sewer overflows frequently occur at sewer manholes. It's important that all sanitary sewer overflows should be reported to NTUA immediately. And you can report these sanitary sewer overflows directly to NTUA. What you'll see here on this slide is the phone number for NTUA to report these sanitary sewer overflows. There are a number of reasons sanitary sewer overflows can happen, and they can include, but obviously not limited to, blockages from inappropriate materials sent to the sewer, like fats and oils and grease, household products, tree roots. The lines can break. There can be sewer defects that allow stormwater and groundwater to overflow the system, and also power failures can lead to backups. So as we look at what systems currently look like in the Chinle community, you can see here, this is the lagoon in the Chinle community. And it's important to note that the wastewater treatment plants in Chinle are old and for many years have not been able to meet the minimum requirements for treatment of wastewater before discharge into the washes near the plants. And the sewers that collect wastewater and send it to these plants are also old, and any sewage spills that occur must be addressed. In this slide, you can see the various cells. This is where wastewater is treated and released back into the nearby wash. So future systems, as we look at future systems and community benefits, here you will see a picture of one of the newer facilities located in Window Rock. Future facilities will look similar to this facility. The purpose of improving these wastewater treatment facilities is to remove as much of the suspended solids as possible before the remaining water, called effluent, is discharged back into the environment and washes. So, why are we here? We're going to take some time to go over the purpose and goals of community engagement and who is involved in this process. So, as you can see here, the purpose is really to inform the community on efforts to improve NTUA's handling of wastewater and sewage spills in your community, and really get and learn community concerns and impacts regarding NTUA's wastewater collection, treatment, discharge, and facility siting to ensure that the community's voice is incorporated into the partial consent decree moving forward. Ultimately, the United States is working with the Navajo Nation counterparts to support NTUA's effort to come into compliance with the Clean Water Act permits by improving wastewater treatment and repairing or replacing sewage lines to eliminate sewage spills. Ultimately, this outreach will help the US EPA and US DOJ better understand community concerns as it works with NTUA. So as you can see, what communities are involved in this process? In this process, the communities of Tuba City, Kayenta, Chinle, and surrounding communities are currently involved in this process. As we look at the federal and tribal organizations that are working to find solutions to these problems, we have NTUA, who owns, operates, and maintains the wastewater treatment plants and sewers in Tuba City, Kayenta, and Chinle. NTUA must operate and maintain its plants and sewers in compliance with the Clean Water Act permits issued by US EPA. You have US DOJ, who facilitates the efforts of the 5 federal and tribal organizations so that they can understand the problems, explore solutions, and find common ground during this process. They also document agreements and propose them to a federal court. You also have the US EPA, who works in partnership with Navajo Nation EPA and issues Clean Water Act permits to NTUA. They also monitor NTUA's compliance under the Act and these permits, and provides grants to NTUA to construct new plants and sewers, as well as coordinates grant funding with other federal agencies. You also have Navajo Nation EPA, who works in partnership with US EPA. Navajo Nation EPA monitors NTUA's compliance with the Navajo Nation Clean Water Act and regulations. They also coordinate with US EPA to conduct inspections of the plants to determine compliance with their Clean Water Act permits. They also ensure that NTUA's training and certification requirements for wastewater operators are consistent with Navajo Nation EPA's requirements. They also require plant operators to be certified to their level of expertise in running the plants, and maintains a website that provides the public with information about wastewater collection and treatment. Then you have Navajo Nation DOJ, who advises Navajo Nation EPA on compliance issues under the Federal and Navajo Nation Clean Water Act. They also partner with US DOJ to identify and address barriers to NTUA's compliance. And finally, Keystone Policy Center for Tribal and Indigenous Engagement, who does not represent a federal or tribal entity, who really serves as a nonprofit, non-advocacy consultant to the US Department of Justice. The purpose and involvement for Keystone Policy Center is to conduct community outreach and engagement, share community insights and recommendations to the US Department of Justice and the US EPA that are gathered during outreach and engagement. So, as we look at what work is being done to make improvements, we'll look at overall improvements and community involvement. So as we look at improvements, in the short term, NTUA will need to make improvements to the existing treatment plants to ensure they are more effective. NTUA needs to study the condition of sewers in the communities and figure out where repairs are needed to avoid future sewage spills. Upcoming sections will elaborate more on the agreed upon improvements. And here you'll see a map of the current collection systems in Chinle. This is where they will be conducting studies on ensuring there's more effective sewer lines. So as we look at community involvement to this point, as mentioned before, efforts began in spring of 2023 with site visits to NTUA facilities in each community, initial community outreach, and we began with discussions with elders to inform them of this process. This past summer, we outreached chapter houses, community members who were directly impacted, and engaged in additional community engagement, which leads us to where we are today, which is the public comment on the proposed solutions to NTUA's wastewater collection treatment problems. So as we look at the settlement process here, you can see that we'll be going over the partial consent decree, NTUA's compliance plan overview, what that compliance plan timeline looks like, budgeting and planning for NTUA, the collection systems for NTUA, as well as management of wastewater treatment plants, and public comment on specific deliverables. So as we look at what a partial consent decree is, obviously a partial consent decree is a very large and substantial legal document. And so one of the purpose of this webinar is to break that legal document down to help the community understand what it is, what it does, and what it means. So basically, a partial consent decree is really a framework for compliance that everyone agrees upon. And a partial consent decree lays out the steps that NTUA needs to take to come into compliance with the Clean Water Act. And essentially, a partial consent decree is an obligation to do the work, and it ensures compliance and ultimately is lodged in a federal district court. So, as you can see here with the NTUA compliance plan overview, there are short-term solutions and long-term solutions. As mentioned before, upgrading the existing lagoons and treatment plants to reduce the number of pollutants that are released, improve operation and maintenance of existing wastewater treatment, and really looking and studying the sewer system to plan for its future repairs. Some of the long-term solutions are to construct the new treatment plants that will fully comply with the Clean Water Act, such as the treatment plant that we covered earlier that exists in Window Rock. The old plants will need to be decommissioned, and there will need to be repair to the sewer systems to reduce sewage spills, overflows, and backups. So as we look here with the compliance plan timeline, you can see that starting in April of 2025, they will begin the operation of upgraded treatment plants. In February of 2026, the plan to decommission the old treatment plants will be submitted. In late 2026 or early 2027, a complete sewer system evaluation survey will be done. February of 2027, we'll finish the new treatment plants. And in late 2027 or early 2028, the plan for repairing these sewer system defects will begin. So as you can see, this is a very long and extensive process, in which it is so important to get the community's input on all of these steps moving forward. As we look at NTUA's budget and planning, this is a part of the consent decree that spells out how NTUA will budget and spend their funding and budget for future efforts. Also look at the submission of a capital improvement plan that identifies the projects, the plan, and finances all the capital improvement needs for current and future facilities within a 5-year period. This capital improvement plan will need to be submitted annually. And also looking at the submission of annual budgets on operation and maintenance. Also looking at evaluation of whether projected wastewater revenues are sufficient to fund the required improvements. So as we look here at NTUA's collection system, which is in the partial consent decree and includes a sanitary sewer overflow plan, which establishes procedure for response to cleanup and minimizing impacts to the community of sanitary sewer overflows. It includes how NTUA will report location, the volume, causes of SSOs to EPA, also notifies potential impact to public and community members. It'll also look at sewer system evaluation surveys, and NTUA is required to do an evaluation on each collection system. It'll look at sanitary sewer evaluation survey work plan and reports. And the purpose of this plan is really to cover anticipated activities, implementation schedules, compliance dates, and work to be performed. The report will summarize the findings after the study is complete. And finally, a plan for collection system repair, rehabilitation, or replacement if that is needed. So that proposed plan and timeline for repairing all sewer system defects are identified in the evaluation survey. So as we look at management of NTUA's wastewater treatment plants, the consent decree requires various operation and maintenance improvements for the existing upgraded and replacement treatment plants. So NTUA must retain expert consultants to provide technical guidance for proper operation and maintenance of the plants. They're required to update the operation manuals for both the upgraded and eventual replacement plants. They'll need to train all treatment operators on proper operation and maintenance of the plants. They'll need to demonstrate that all facility operators are properly certified and conduct annual pay and compensation surveys to make any adjustments necessary to recruit and retain properly certified operators. Regularly report its inspections and operation and maintenance activities to EPA. This decree also requires that NTUA create and implement comprehensive assessment management program by using asset management software to create inventory for all critical assets, automate work, order production and tracking, and catalog routine maintenance. So NTUA will need to acquire and maintain an inventory of all critical assets so it can immediately conduct repairs without being delayed by back-ordered parts or supply chain disruptions. So, when we discuss public comment on specific deliverables, the partial consent decree requires NTUA to solicit comment from the community on certain draft deliverables That includes the sanitary sewer overflow response plan, the sanitary sewer evaluation, study work plan, the plan for collection system, repair, rehabilitation, and replacement, a plan for decommissioning the plants for wastewater treatment plants, and sludge assessment reports and management plans for wastewater treatment. NTUA notification to the public will be through NTUA's website and social media pages. To subscribe or be notified of future comment periods on NTUA's website, you can go by clicking on the website here below, and also go to NTUA's website and click the red tile that says NTUA sewer related plans. I'm sorry, excuse me. So as far as the public comment on the partial consent decree is concerned, as mentioned before, US DOJ is currently seeking and accepting public comment on the partial consent decree. So you'll see here the various procedures that you can go about submitting public comment. It is preferred that public comment be submitted via email that you'll see here at pubcomment.enrd@usdoj.gov. U.S. Department of Justice is asking that comments be submitted no later than 2024. And as you will see here in the subject line, they are asking for you to identify your email as Navajo Tribal Utility Authority. This public comment is one of the most important aspects of this effort. It's important that to all of the entities involved, that each community have input and voice into this partial consent decree. Information and contact for the various federal and tribal entities involved, you can refer to this page here. And finally, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you sticking with us. And I know this is a lot of information. If there's one thing that I can leave you with here today is that this process is which all parties are hoping to have your input. All parties are hoping to have your voice and your thoughts incorporated in this moving forward. So I just want to say, ahe. We respectfully thank you for your time and sharing any thoughts, concerns, and/or ideas that you have. Below in the comment section, there will be links to the Federal Register where you will submit your public comments. There will also be links to one-pagers, fact pages, and also a link if you have questions or comments on the community engagement outreach in which you can reach me. Thank you very much for your time. I had.